Going on YouTube, Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be doing a tier list for Regulation G, but not the restricted legendaries. That we did about 2 months ago, which we still need to update, by the way. But what I want to do with this tier list is the other guys, right? You know, what about the non-restricted legendaries for Regulation G? Where do they rank? And that's what today's video is about. So what I did was I went and found, you know, the best available tier list. You know, that had like a decent amount of mons, and then I just added some that I felt were left out that are still, like, you know, somewhat relevant, that we can put on this tier list. Otherwise, you know, I'm just gonna get like all of the Pokemon and the baby evolutions, and I just wasn't gonna do that for a video. So I found the best available one. I added some additional ones, and this is what we got here for today. Now, before I start ranking things, let me just at least explain the tiers here. So of course we have the S tier at the top. It's what I call the best of the best. You know, best abilities, best stats, you know, best typing. You know, basically you're gonna find these on 9 out of 10 teams, your staples, right? Then after that, your A tier mons, these are like your solid and consistent options. Things that, you know, basically you can plug in into most teams and they fit in very, very well. B is what we call, you know, the good but not great tier. And I split that up. I split that into what I call the high B tier and then the low B tier. So like these are still like pretty good options. They're just, you know, held back by one thing. Like maybe they have good stats and good typing, but not a great ability, or, you know, good typing, but the stats, maybe there's a stat there that's a little bit underwhelming, right? But either way, still very solid for what it can do, and you'll still find it on, you know, a good majority of teams, as I would say. C is what we call the niche tier. Now, this tier, I want to be very clear. C does not mean bad. It just means the Pokemon is only good for this particular team and this particular archetype. That's where it shines, and on that kind of team, it's like S tier. But anywhere else, it's not good, okay? Hence the reason, hence the name niche, right? Only very good at doing one thing and one thing only, okay? D is what we call the don't use tier, you know, that not great for what the format right now competitively. And thankfully, I don't think there's too many of them. You know, again, I just found like the best available tier list, and there are some D tier mons here, but that's okay. You know, at the very least, we don't have too many of these, I don't think. And then last, you know, this is the restricted legendaries here. Now, I'm not going to be ranking these. I just had to separate them from the given tier list that I found on a website at the time. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. All right, so let's start things off here with the Alolan Ninetales here. I think I either want to put it in like low B or niche tier, and I think right now I'm gonna lean towards niche. So, you know, the weather control is obvious, right? You can always change weather on those Pelipper teams, the Tornadus teams that want to just go for sunny day stuff, or against Koraidon stuff, so that's really good. You have screens, so you can make your team bulkier, which is nice. And then, you know, the fairy typing against dark types that are a little bit more prevalent now in Regulation G because of the Calyrex Shadow Rider. That's your advantage there as well. I would say this is best with the Ice Rider and Kyurem White, but, you know, there have been results, you know, with Ice Rider in terms of like day 2 results, pretty good. And then there have been like a couple of 6-3 results with Kyurem White at some of these regionals. So not too bad. So in that sense, again, I put in the niche tier. I think other weather setters are better, just like, you know, for example, Torkoal and Pelipper. But for what we can get out of Ninetales, I think niche tier is correct for sure. The Arcanine, again, another one that's in the niche tier right now. Listen, Incineroar is just so much better for what we want it to do. And, you know, for a while, you know, there was a debate, like, is Arcanine going to be extinct when Incineroar comes back? Is it still going to be used? And for a while it was, right? It still has 6 regional wins. But at the same time, Incineroar just does so much. Again, the knockoff is really good. The dark typing is really what separates the Instant from the Arcanine here. The fact that you can pressure the Calyrex and force it to Terra Fairy is really, really good. And then at the same time, you're not 4 times weak to water. And in a format where there's Kyogre, you don't want that 4 times weakness. And Incineroar is just a little bit more bulkier for that reason. And then at the same time, Parting Shot is really good. Fake Out is really good. So, you know, U-turn is also really, really nice, you know, for a pivot turn if you want to go the AV Instant route. So I think Incineroar is just a little bit better for, you know, as an Intimidate option. And if you really wanted more offense, then I would just use something like Entei. I think Entei would do that job much better than the Hisuian Arcanine. But you can still make use of it. All right, the Urshifu Rapid Strike. Here we go. There's our first S tier mon there. Again, it's surging strikes. With the ability, Unseen Fist, really good. You can't protect in front of it. Super strong. The Scarf lets you outspeed the Shadow Rider. It's without a doubt, top 3 usage, for most of the format. Basque Legion here. Yeah, man. I mean, it's a good mon, but I'm gonna put in don't use. I think yes, it's gonna be good on like those rain teams with Kyogre, but that means you're gonna have to forego your other water slot, and usually it's an Urshifu on those teams. So if you gave me the option to use Basque Legion versus Urshifu on a Kyogre team, I'm going with the Urshifu, man. So while it's not a terrible mon, I don't think this is the format for Basque Legion right now. Okay, so just don't quote me. So hopefully you guys understand. Galarian Moltres. So we first saw this used, with Michael Zhang and Keanu when they paired this with Zamazenta and Latios here. And Moltres has some good viability here. I'm going to put in low B tier here. Again, dark typing really good against the Calyrex stuff. You can nasty plot, you can set up, you can click Tailwind for that matter. So you can give your team speed control. All in all, I think low B is pretty correct. Actually, you can even put it in niche. But I think low B is still correct. Like, you can still find some use outside of like Zamazenta stuff, in my opinion. And anytime you have Berserk, I think you always have to like respect it. So, just take my word for it. But again, weak to Ice, weak to Electric, and in a format where Calyrex, Ice Rider, and Miraidon are very rampant, that's also something that you have to be aware of when you're playing Galarian Moltres there. So just be aware of that. But I think low B tier is correct. Enamorous. Again, niche tier, very good, strong, fairy type attacker, special attacker. It can't be susceptible to Intimidate. Amoonguss can't do anything to it, but really only good on those Trick Room teams. Otherwise, you don't really see it in play. I think it's like less than 1% usage. So, yeah, same thing here with the Venusaur. Only really good on some of those Sun teams. But, those Koraidon, Groudon teams are just using Rillaboom anyway. Or if anything, Brute Bonnet has a little bit better use as a grass type on those teams, if not Rillaboom. But still, Chlorophyll in the Sun, Sleep Powder shenanigans, Weather Ball, etc. You can still make use of it, but I think it's going to be niche at best here. Clefairy, this is like the big difference maker between, for Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and even Terapagos. I think those are the two teams where you'll see it the most. Seldomly the Miraidon stuff, but again, Friend Guard is really good. Follow Me, Helping Hand, Astro Barrage, Helping Hand, Terra Starfall, really good. Redirects a lot of the dark types away from the Calyrex. Redirects the fighting type stuff away from Terapagos, because you can resist both. You are a fairy type. And, at the same time, you also get After You, which is really good in those Trick Room games, right? So Clefairy can outspeed the Ice Rider in Trick Room. So from there, you can just click After You, and then your faster option gets to go first anyway. So that's the benefit, with Clefairy. And then you always have the ever so popular or ever so infamous Sing, which can put things to sleep, right? So I do like Clefairy. I could even arguably put it in like high B tier. Like, outside of those Calyrex teams and those Terapagos teams, you don't see that much Clefairy. So I think it's either low A or high B right now. And I think I want to put it in high B, okay? I don't think it's like a clear-cut staple like some of the others, but I think high B is correct. I may change that and put it in like low A later on, but let's just go through the rest of the list and see where we end up. Gyarados, just like Arcanine, again, another C tier Intimidate option. Pretty good. Like, it's not terrible. I know Geo has been using this. Helping Hand, Thunder Wave, Icy Wind, Speed Control. You can get all of this. It's very bulky. You can wall the Surging Strikes Urshifu, which is really nice. But again, the 4x weakness to something like a Miraidon, and then now Iron Hands is coming back into the meta a little bit more now. Just makes Gyarados a little bit tougher to use. And again, Clear Amulet is prevalent on a lot of these physical attackers too. So sometimes that's not so great. And you don't get knockoff like Ensign, right? So a little bit tougher. But that being said, on the right kind of team, it can still work just like the Arcanine here. I think C tier is correct. Speaking of more C tier mods, I think Magmar and Electabuzz also belong here. Again, we've seen, we showcased Magmar, right, with our Terapagos team. Not ours, but, when we did our collaboration showcase, with Penguin. And then Electabuzz, of course, is, from Tub Nation, when they use this as a bulky follow me redirector that can't fall asleep to Amoonguss, so that's really, really good there. But again, with the Violite, they're super bulky, and that's really what you want these guys to do. You want them to support your Trick Room setter, and then from there, just be annoying and stay on the field, and then the Trick Room sweeper can do its thing, right? But for that reason, again, niche tier for sure. Here we go. Don't use Articuno. Again, Articuno had its time in Regulation F. Thank you, Tio. But outside of that, that's pretty much it. Zapdos, I would also put it here. Again, I like Zapdos. But have you guys used Zapdos? I forgot this thing was was still around, but still a very good Pokemon, just not the format for it right now. There's better options for what you want Zapdos to do that other things can do as well. Dragonite's still pretty good. I'm gonna say somewhere in the B right here. It's either like high B or low B. Where do I want to put? I think low B right now is correct for Dragonite here. You don't see it as much anymore. Dragonite Chenpao is still pretty strong, so I think low B is still like pretty correct. Extreme Speed, Choice Band stuff is still running around. Occasionally you see like the Assault Vest stuff. You can do Dragon Dance stuff, but that's a little bit rare. But other than that, still pretty decent with Chenpao, just not used as much in Regulation G versus Regulation F. Things are not dying as much, and then again. Where you can't really extreme speed a ghost type here, so it's the Calorie Shadow Rite being, but I think B and low B is correct for Dragonite. P2, same thing here. I think low B is also pretty good here. Again, bulky Trick Room setter, you get access to Eerie Impulse. Tri Attack is pretty cool. Recover makes it so annoying to get rid of. And just overall always going to be solid whenever it's in a meta, and I think low B right now is correct here. You could even argue like higher B, but I definitely wouldn't put it in the A tier. Not just yet. Not right now. Anyway, 2 months in the format. Smeargle, I would probably put it again, just where Clefairy is. Again, another good support tool for the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and even some Smeargle and Miraidon teams that really like it. Again, access to Wide Guard, access to Spore, Follow Me. Really, really good support option that you can get with Smeargle. Moody is kind of funny in some scenarios, but I think the B tier is correct for something like Smeargle. Hitmontop, again, another C tier Intimidate niche Pokemon. You get Fake Out, unlike these other two niche Pokemon, so just like Incineroar. And then you also get access to Close Combat, which is pretty good into something like Terapagos a little bit, but it doesn't have a great attacking stat. And then at the same time, okay, you get Wide Guard, so that's pretty good. That can separate you from these other guys, but other than that, I think Incineroar is just a little bit better. If you wanted a Wide Guard user, I think there are better options. But I definitely would rank it higher than these other two Intimidate options for sure. All right, Entei, same thing. I do like Entei here. Sacred Fire is really nice. You don't have to commit a Ho-Oh slot for it. Funny how we said, we like Ho-Oh. We did a team building for it in a couple of videos ago. But Entei Sacred Fire, really good. Also gets access to Snarl and Extreme Speed. So a lot of things going for it. Then you get some niche moves like Stomping Tantrum, not too bad into something like Miraidon, for example. But Sacred Fire, very good. You can't intimidate it. You can't fake it out, because of Inner Focus, just like Dragonite here. So I do rank it a little bit higher than Dragonite here, but otherwise, nice, solid fire type option that's not named Incineroar or Volcarona, right? Suicune, so either low B or the niche tier. Again, same thing. I kind of like, you get access to Tailwind, you get Icy Wind, you get Snarl, you get Scald. These are all great things that Suicune can give you. Speed control and a little bit of damage mitigation. Super bulky mon. Just like Entei, can't get intimidated because of Inner Focus. Can't get faked out, so almost guaranteed to set it up. But, there's still Rillaboom, there's still Miraidon. So a little bit tough for Suicune sometimes, and, doesn't put out as much offensive aggression as something like Entei here. But overall, it's a good niche support option for a bulky Tailwind setter, if you can call it that. And Snarl is actually pretty nice. And then don't forget, we did feature a Mist set with Zacian, which is really nice because then the Incineroar can't intimidate it, which is kind of funny. So again, that niche pairing with it does make sense. So I think C tier is correct for Suicune. Speaking of another one, we're getting a lot of C tiers. All right, so we got Tyranitar here. Not again, the weaknesses of Rock Dark typing have held Tyranitar back. ever since Urshifu came about, since Sword and Shield, right? But you do have terrestrialization available to you now. You have access to weather, which is nice against other weather teams like Pelipper and the Sun stuff. You're a dark type, so that gives you an advantage against Calyrex Shadow teams. That being said, they do have a fairy move now, called Draining Kiss, so that's not great for T-Tar. But rock damage is good again offensively against a lot of these things that are prevalent in the meta. We didn't even go through everything yet, but it's got some use. You can find a team with it. I'm not saying like you want to build a sand team with something like Extra Drill and then dominate the meta, but Tyranitar itself on a team can do something. We've seen it a little bit. Okay, I think that's great. Same thing here with Torkoal. I think Torkoal is also pretty good on a lot of teams that have Trick Room, of course. Eruption is just going to do so much damage. A lot of offensive pressure. And the only way to beat it is, with priority moves or, just flipping the Trick Room upside their head. But I think high B or either low A for Torkoal is correct here. Very, very good sweeper here. Don't use Metagross. Again, Dynamax is over from Sword and Shield. Even when regulationG wasn't about, Metagross saw very, very little play. Like, it did have some results in a couple tours, but besides that, hasn't really gotten its leggings in Scarlet and Violet. I think there's just better options if you wanted to Steel type. And then, again, the Psychic typing doesn't make it great against the Shadow Rider and other Ghost types like Fluttermane for that matter, right? And, other dark types too, like Urshifu Single Strike. So I think Metagross had its time in Dynamax, but right now, not so much. All right, Latias. Yeah, again, another one. C tier, bulky Tailwind setter, pretty fast, as well. But again, very weak to Astral Barrage. You're forced to tear it, in certain scenarios. But not too bad. I feel like, again, Recover, Tailwind, pretty nice Rocky Helmet set. For a while, this was really, really prevalent at the beginning of like Regulation F, but since then, not so much there. But, again, C tier, if you want to make use of it, I guess it can work on certain teams, but why would you, if you really want to Tailwind, just use something like Tornadus or Whimsicott, right? So I think you're going to have to be hard-pressed to find a use for Latias over those two. Gastrodon, another one, C tier, very good in terms of what we wanted to do for Storm Drain. So that's great against Urshifu Single Strike. I'm sorry, Rapid Strike. That's great against Kyogre stuff. So you have that going for you. And you're a ground type, so that's good against Miraidon, especially if it locks itself into an electric move, because a lot of them have choice specs right now. So Gastrodon looking pretty good there, okay? There is a lot of Rillaboom, especially now because there's so much Miraidon. And the Ogerpons are still running around, so you have to be careful with that. But other than that, Gastrodon can have a good niche on certain teams, and it has some results in regionals. So, niche tier, I think is correct there. Gallade, same thing. Sometimes, it was used a lot on some of those Trick Room teams. It's a fighting type. With White Guard, you can hit Terrapagos really, really hard. That being said, again, and you get Trick Room, right? So, niche tier for that, but again, only good on those Trick Room teams for that matter. Heatran, yeah, just like Metagross, it was used a lot, back in like Regulation E, D, and even a little bit of F, but now is just not the time for it. Cresselia, bulky Trick Room setter, again, just weak to Astral Barrage, but we did feature a team with Zamazenta and Tinglu with Cresselia. That was pretty interesting in itself, but I think with Ursaluna, it can still do some good stuff. Maybe someone needs to like revamp the chalk core a little bit, but besides that, I don't see too much use. I think I think Ferrigraph is just the best Trick Room setter right now. That's not named Calyrex. So if you really wanted a Trick Room setter, I would just use Ferrigraph, and maybe some of these other options here. Like even Porygon to me is a little bit better than Cresselia, because again, you're a normal type, right? So Calyrex Shadow Rider can't hit Porygon, but Cresselia can get hit by Calyrex Shadow Rider. So that's the main difference there. As to why Porygon has a higher tier in our list than Cresselia. All right, Whimsicott, here we go. A tier, I do like it, just like Tornadus. You could even argue very high B tier, but again, very nice with those Miraidon teams. I was looking at it, mainly only Miraidon's Tailwind, Moonblast, Encore are really, really nice moves. You can also use Cotton Spore for that matter. Fake Tears is a niche move that you can run on Whimsicott. But overall, not bad. It's you have to almost sash this thing to an extent. But I do like Whimsicott here. I might even drop it down to like high B tier. I'm not so sure yet, but I think this is correct. And same thing with like Clefairy here. I might even just push it to A tier. When my list is all said and done here. Gothitelle, I do like Gothitelle. I do think it belongs in the B tier for sure. Again, trapping things with Fake Out and Trick Room is really, really nice. And then you could also pair this thing, with the Calyrexes. They can't switch out, or even with something like Urshifu. You're just forced to take the Surging Strikes or forced to take the Wicked Blow here. I think Shadow Tag is a very unique ability that only Gothitelle can really do. And in my opinion, it's always going to have some use in a meta just because it's so bulky, right? But I do think low B tier is correct here. Volcarona, we love Volcarona, right? We're always putting this in the A tier, right? It just always delivers when people sleep on it. And we on this channel, we never sleep on Volcarona. We love it. Flame Body, just the fact that you can burn some of these physical attackers is quite nice. You're a bug type, which is great against the fighting types that want to hit Terrapagos really hard. Volcarona is really good with Terrapagos, by the way. You get access to Quiver Dance, which is really, really good. You can outspeed the format. You also get access to Tailwind if you want. Struggle Bug to neuter special attackers, and then Quiver Dance, so this way you can wall them out. Is really nice. Bug Buzz, super effective damage against something like an Ice Rider for that matter. And then just one Quiver Dance is all it takes, and then you can sweep a lot of teams with something like Flamethrower, right? So be aware for Volcarona. I think it's really nice on a lot of different teams, whether it's like Shadow Rider or Terrapagos teams, or even like some Miraidon teams are running it now. But I do like Volcarona, very, very solid for what it can do. We have some genies here, and I don't even see Tornadus here. I think Tornadus is somewhere down here that I have. Oh, there it is. So why is it all the way over there? We might as well rank all three of them right here. This one's in the S tier, this one's in the A tier, this one is in the niche tier. Right, very big difference. Okay, so without a doubt, the Prankster Tornadus one is S tier. Again, you get access to Rain Dance and Sunny Day. So you can make your Urshifu do more damage. You can manually change weather if the other team pivots against you. You can make your Chiyu and your Flutter Mains hit harder if you have Sunny Day, if you're running that type of Tornadus. You get access to Prankster Taunt. Bleak Wind Storm with Kyogre is very, very strong because it's accurate. You can make it bulky with a Rocky Helmet set to do like big chip damage against physical attackers. You got access to Scary Face. Lots of different tools that you can use on Tornadus. But I would say it's the best Tailwind setter. I would put it again one tier above the Whimsicott for sure. All right, Sylveon. All right, this one's an interesting one. I still think it's in the niche tier. Again, very bulky fairy type, which is great against all the fighting types that people want to bring against Terrapagos. Also very good against all the dark types that people want to bring it against the Calyrex Shadow Rider. That being said, it is a little slow and does need maybe a turn to get going because of the Throat Spray Hyper Voice stuff. But that being said, it's still pretty good. It hits very hard for that matter. But I don't really see it as much. It doesn't get as much play. Maybe if you want to have fun on a limitless tournament, it could do really well. But as far as like the regional level, not so much results there. But still can work if you're willing to explore it. All right, here. All right, we finally got to Incineroar here. Of course, S tier without a doubt, no questions asked here. This time around, people are foregoing the Flare Blitz on Incineroar, going for Will-O-Wisp to burn these physical attackers because a lot of them have Clear Amulet, right? So your Intimidate is not going to work originally. You do need Knockoff for a couple reasons. Remove those key items, remove the Clear Amulet, one-shot the Calyrex if they don't Terra. And then at the same time, you have Parting Shot, you have Fake Out, like we said, the Intimidate support, and then the Will-O-Wisp, again, more damage mitigation. You can even run a niche Snarl set here if you want. AV Incineroar is also another thing, a little bit more offensive. Lots of different ways you can use the Incin depending on what you want. But for the main thing is that it's great at positioning and it's great at damage mitigation. gives you room to pivot. So for that reason, always going to be the king of VGC. Has all the results in the world. Nothing else needs to be said about this thing. All right, Pre-Marina, we did use this. We liked it a lot in regulation. What was it? F, where we made that team with Registeel, right? But I think now we're at the point. Listen, there's so much more Miraidon. There's so much more Rillaboom. And there's more Iron Hands now that it's back in the meta. I think it's just not super great to use right now as of this given moment. So I'm just gonna put it here and don't use tier. So sad. Combo here, I do like combo. I think it's a fighting type that does well into Terapagos. Again, you can often see this thing, not often, but you can see this thing paired with Calyrex Shadow Rider teams, just because I feel like all Shadow Rider teams need a good strong fighting type, because you can't hit the normal types with Astral Barrage, right? And Kamo has this endgame with Iron Defense Body Press stuff, where you can one-shot things if you're able to get it set up. You've got Overcoat here. Amoonguss can't really do anything to you. You can one-shot instants after a while, right, with the Body Press stuff. So that's really good. I almost want to put it here in the high beat. You know what? I will. I do like Kamo a lot, and I think it deservingly belongs with these guys as well here. Rillaboom, another S tier mod. Again, just like, here we go. The Fire Water Grass Boys. Instant Urshifu Rillaboom S tier. No surprise there. Fake out pressure along with Incineroar. You got the U-turn pivot potential. Grassy Glide priority move. You can change terrain against Miraidon now, which is good. And you make it do less damage. You can resist its attack too. Wood Hammer is strong. You can even run some niche taunt sets or Miracle Seed Rillabooms to do even more damage. But grassy terrain recovery is really good. But again, like, just these three in general, just like the best of the best for sure, without a doubt. Corviknight, niche tier. Mirror Armor is quite good. It's not bad against the Intimidate stuff. You get access to Tailwind. You can also do Iron Defense Body Press stuff here. You also get access to Tailwind. But I feel like whatever you want Corviknight to do, something else can just do it better. Like, if you wanted Iron Defense Body Press stuff, just use Combo or use something else, right? And if you wanted a Tailwind user, just use Tornadus, okay? You have to be hard pressed again to find a niche for Corviknight that you can't get anywhere else, that some other Pokemon can't do better than for Corviknight, right? All right, we got a string of fairies over here. We got Hatterene, Grimmsnarl, and the cake thing that the name escapes me. Alchemy. Okay, so here we go. Hatterene, I think, again, on those Trick Room teams, just like Torkoal, I'm going to put it in the same thing. Really good on those Trick Room teams. Expanding Force is a thing. Dazzling Gleam is a thing. Just strong fairy damage against fighting and dark types. Once it's done its job, then you can bring in your Calyrex. But I always like Hatterene. I think it's always going to be like within the B tier without a doubt, especially in a non-restricted format. And non-restricted, I'm putting this thing in the A. But there's so much more things. I'm going to put it in B here. Grimmsnarl, all right, this thing is picking up there. I think right now it's high B, but I think by the end of things, I think it's definitely going to reach the A tier. Screens is really good. I've seen Screens Miraidon. I've seen Screens Terapagos. I think you might even see, we've seen Screens Kyogre. You know what? Screw it. I'm putting it in A tier. I'm putting it in A tier right now. Grimmsnarl has always been one of our favorites, right? And if you had to ask me, like, are you on the same level as Whimsicott? Absolutely, bro. If you asked me, am I going to pick Whimsicott or Grimmsnarl? Like, let's say Tornadus wasn't an option. If I had to pick Whimsicott or Grimmsnarl, you already know I'm picking Grimmsnarl. Screens goes a long way in a restricted format. Listen, these things have base 150 attack stats, 150 special attack. That's so much damage. You can't let these things one-shot your Pokemon and the game ends in 2 turns. You need a way to mitigate damage. Grimmsnarl can do that with the screen support. You got Spirit Break pressure against a lot of the dragons and the special attackers, and that's really good for again, damage reduction. You've got access to Parting Shot too, because you're a prankster Pokemon. Just be careful what you pivot into. So Grimmsnarl can do a lot of different things for your team, and it makes a big difference even when it's fainted, right? Because even though it's dead, you still got those 8 turns of screens ticket, right? So really good there. You also get Thunder Wave for speed control. I like it more than Whimsicott for sure. I think A tier is correct here. Alchemy, I think, either low B or niche tier. I'm going to put it in the niche tier for now. Decorate is really good. Sweet Veil, you know, you can't get slept. I think that's pretty cool. But I think it's very niche. I think there's better options for that slot if you really wanted to use something like an Alchemy. But, you know, it's not bad. You can still make it work for sure. Indeedee, definitely. You know, do I want to put in A tier? I almost do. Yeah, I'll put in A tier. You know what? Indeedee pretty good. Again, Psychic Terrain, deny priority. You know, just like Ferrograph, really, really good at doing that. In fact, I'm going to put both of them up here. You know, they're both good at doing that job. Indeedee can take away Miraidon terrain. It can take away Rillaboom terrain. You get access to Trick Room. You know, Helping Hand, which is really nice. Same thing with Ferrograph. It can do Helping Hand stuff too. I like it a lot. Again, it's also very bulky. You could do like Psychic Seed stuff. You can do Rocky Helmet stuff. And just does its job well, you know, for what it's supposed to do. Redirect attacks, set Trick Room, the occasional Helping Hand. That's all I need Indeedee to do. Take away terrain too, right? Ferrograph, same thing. Deny priority moves. Bulky Trick Room setter. Somewhat bulky Trick Room setter. Foul play stuff is really good for Ferrograph. Again, Helping Hand, like we mentioned, also very, very nice. And then it can also do like these niche Throat Spray Hyper Voice sets. So now the Ferrograph can be a special attacking sweeper because, again, remember, this thing has 110 special attack set. That's still pretty decent, right? Then you add +1 to it. It's going to start hitting relatively hard. So, and again, you are normal type, just like Indeedee. So Calyrex Shadow Rider can't hit you. And then you can hit it back because you get access to Shadow Ball, which is where those offensive sets do come into play. So, you know, you have to consider that. But overall, both of them, they do their job, what they're supposed to do, and they do it very, very well. So for that reason, I do put them in the A tier. All right, next up being the Urshifu Single Strike over here. So not quite the S tier as its counterpart, but still very, very strong. I think A tier is correct here. You know, again, Wicked Blow, very good against the Calyrex. You're a Dark type, right? So both Calyrexes are susceptible to Wicked Blow, and then you can also Wicked Blow Lunala stuff. You have Sucker Punch Pressure, Close Combat. I think, you know, on certain hyper-offensive teams, this is also pretty solid. And even on some of those Calyrex Ice Rider teams with Goldango, it's also pretty good. But I still think the Rapid Strike will definitely belong in the S tier, whereas the Single Strike is still good enough for the A tier. Very solid Urshifu in general. It's still Urshifu, right? So I think A tier is correct there. Regidrago, a little bit of a niche tier bond. Again, besides Grant's team with Zacian and the Whimsicott, you don't really see it much. We did feature one squad with Kyogre. That was the MSS winning squad there. So, you know, it does have pins there, you know, where you can click Tailwind and click Dragon Energy. Things are forced to, you know, go for Terra Fairy, and then the Kyogre can just clean up in the back, you know, with Water Spout stuff. But other than hyper offensive teams, you're not really going to see Regidrago, and even then, it still doesn't see as much play just because there's other better options here. But if you're an experienced Regidrago user, then you'll definitely explore it and use it. But I think C tier is correct for where you're going to use the Regidrago for sure. I think Ursaluna, also very good. Now, is it as good? Like, either it's going to be like high B or low A here. I think for now, you know what? Actually, I think this one's going to be the high B, and then the Blood Moon. Where's the Blood Moon? Yeah, the Blood Moon is going to be the A tier mod. Yeah, I think this is better. So, you know, with the main difference, of course, as far as like the difference in the tier, is the Blood Moon is a special attacker, which means it's not susceptible to Intimidate, whereas this one is a physical one, and it is susceptible to Intimidate. And that's a huge difference in my opinion. And then at the same time, you know, you can hit the Shadow Rider with the Blood Moon, and the Ursaluna, unless you're running something like the Tech Shadow Claw, you're not going to be able to hit it. You are still a normal type, so it can't hit you either unless it's clicking Draining Kiss. But the fact that I can hit it with the Blood Moon and I can't hit it with the Ursaluna is another huge difference. Those are the two main difference makers here. But other than that, they're both very good in Trick Room. You can also run them on Tailwind. They can outspeed the Shadow Rider if you just run max speed here with the Tailwind setter, you know, like we saw with Rajan's team there. You know, with just Tailwind Whimsicott or Tailwind Tornadus, and still does relatively fine there. You can also see more of the physical Ursaluna on something like a Lunala team. I think that's also very solid. We made that Lunala team too, you know, with the Incinemungus core engine there. I think it's very, very solid. Facade still does a ton of damage. And, you know, with Guts, you're burned and you can't fall asleep to Amoonguss, which is the one advantage I would say over the Blood Moon. So that take that for what you will, but I think this is correct. The Blood Moon at the A tier and the physical one in the high B tier. Armorage, listen, if there's Hatterene, then I don't think too many people are using Armorage. That being said, you still get access to Wide Guard and still Expanding Force. So there is a niche for it, I guess, in that sense. But I just think Hatterene is just a little bit better of an option than Armorage if you had to use it on a Trick Room team. Same thing with Glamora here. Like, it was really good, you know, in a non-restricted format, you know, with the Tailwind stuff with Tornadus, setting up Toxic Spikes, Mortal Spin stuff was really, really good. Poison chip damage, and then just clean up with Dondozo Tatsugiri, which is where we're going to rank next. But in a Regulation G format, you're not really seeing this used. It did have that one day 2 result back in like Indianapolis, the first regional, but since then, hasn't really seen much play. Dondozo Tatsugiri, again, not used as much. In fact, Dondozo has been used more by itself without Tatsugiri. But if I had to rank like both of them here, I would probably just put them like right here. Like you can even argue like they can be like in the niche tier, but I think low B is still like pretty good for both of them altogether. Like they can still be played. We have seen them used seldomly, but like I said, I think Dondozo has been used more outside of the Tatsugiri in this format, more so than like previous formats where they were used together, because this thing has like the yawn stuff, you know, with the Tinglu Sandtune idea, and you know that has seen more play versus like Tatsugiri Dondozo stuff. But I think low B is correct for those two guys. Mousehold C tier. Again, you know, I think Clefairy just does the job better. Like, you are normal type, so the Shadow Rider can't really hit you. You do have Follow Me. You do have Super Fang for good chip damage. But I think just Clefairy does the job a little bit better here. Same thing with Annihilate. Annihilate actually is pretty good. Like, I think it's better than the C tier for sure. I think Annihilate, I think B tier, low B is correct for what we want this thing to do. Like, I've seen the Choice Scarf set, you know, with coaching and Final Gambit, so that's good on like the Trick Room teams, right? Where you can just nuke something right away and then get a free switch into like a Trick Room sweeper. So I think that's very solid. And then at the same time, again, the coaching boost is really good. You can also, you have the fighting type for the Incineroar, right? So you can always click like Drain Punch or Close Combat there. So that's nice. And it's something for the Terapagos, right? Another good fighting type there. So, and again, you're a defined Pokemon. That you know, Incineroar, you know, you can pin that Incineroar slot for Christ's sakes, right? So I think low B, or I might even bump this into like high B territory. It's almost there, but yeah, I think for now, I think low is correct. It's not as splashable as some of these other A tier options, but definitely Annihilate is very, very solid for sure. King Gambit, I do like it in the higher B. You know, again, another defined Pokemon just like in Annihilate. You are Dark type. You can Sucker Punch the Calyrex and just KO it right away. You do have Kowtow Cleave. Again, weak to fighting types, you know, which are a little bit more prevalent now than before. But, you know, still pretty solid. Still has good results in some regionals. You know, just not as good as some of these other A tier mons. I think you can even bump it down to low B tier. I feel like the Annihilate and King Gambit can be interchangeable, arguably, right? Depending on where we are right now. So, you know, do with that with what you will. Screamtail, same thing. Like, I feel like, again, it's pretty decent. You know, I think it's a little bit better than the C tier. You know, it's like Disable Encore goes a long way. And we have seen Screamtail used at a very high level in the regionals. You know, if you just know how to really properly use it, you know, these other options, if you can disable or Encore, like key moves, they have to switch out. And now all of a sudden they're out of position. So I think for that reason, you know, I think Screamtail does merit a low B tier slot as opposed to the C tier niche. When I was using it, I was like, oh my god, this thing is kind of annoying. So yeah, I think it's way better than some of these guys down here. I think low B is correct. Fluttermane, you know, once upon a time, this would be the S tier mon, and I think you can almost put it there, but I think it's still very, very solid. Not as much usage as it once got. You know, it's not like 60-70% usage anymore. It's like down to like 30%, which is still very, very good. You can maybe even make the argument you can still put it in the S tier, right? But for now, I think like A tier is just correct for where it is. You know, good, strong fairy type against the fighting and dark types, like what we said for Sylvia. But you get booster energy now. You get icy wind. You can do specs variants, which are also still very, very good. Photosynthesis in the sun is still very solid with Flutter, with Chi-Yu, right? So I think it's just another good, strong special attacker that you can really use right now in Scaarlet. But I think, it'll just stay here. I think you can put it in the S tier. I think there's no question. Not too many people are going to argue that it would be in the S, but I think right now just like high A tier is correct for where we are right now in terms of what we want from our Flutter main here. Okay, like again, the Calyrex Shadow Rider just kind of puts it down from the S to the A tier in my opinion. Iron Bundle, good with Miraidon. Elsewhere, you don't really see it used, and for that reason, I think a low B tier is correct for where we want it. Just in terms of what it's able to offer. Like again, you can outspeed something like a Flutter main, go for an Icy Wind, go for a Freeze Dry, very, very good. But outside of the Miraidon stuff, you're not really going to see this. It's not used as much, but definitely good still if you want to use a Miraidon team. I think it belongs very well on that kind of team. Iron Hand, same thing, but I would rank this a little bit higher than the Iron Bundle. I think I would put it in the high B tier right now. Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna put it in the low A tier, like something like this. I think Iron Hands again has started to increase more and more as the format has gone along, and more people are using it now just because again, fake out pressure. Again, besides the Miraidon stuff where you're getting an attack boost, you are a fighting type and you do have a fighting move, which means you're gonna be good against Terrapagos. You have Drain Punch, so every time you're dealing chip damage, you're gonna get health back, of course. And some people have run like niche Ice Punch there, for the ground types. So, but overall, like again, it's still a bulky fake out user. You still have base 140 attack stat, and now you get to use your ability. Whereas in previous formats, it was still like top 3 usage for like a whole year without even having an ability. Now all of a sudden you get to use your ability because there's a Miraidon on the field, and you're just getting the attack boost. Now that being said, if you're not using the Clear Amulet, the Incineroar will come in and intimidate you, but that's okay because now you went from +1 back down to neutral, which again, as we said, was still like very good even before it got the attack boost, right? So I think Iron Hands is correct here. And then back Scalper, yeah, once upon a time again was very solid, but in a restricted format, I think there's just better tools for what we need, and back Scalper like can do something, with the Ice Shard stuff, Icicle Spear, but in reality, what do I need it for that something else can't give me and more, right? I think it's very niche. I don't think it's like don't use category, but I don't think we need a niche back Scalper set here. I think C tier is correct here. Goldango, all right. Immunity to Moongus is always going to be very, very good, and I think A tier is correct again. For what we're using Goldango for. Again, Make It Rain does so much damage. You can Nasty Plot. You can use the Specs variant. But all in all, like, again, having a Steel type under Tailwind, which is other cases where you'll see Goldango is very, very strong. Shadow Ball is really good into something like a Flutter main. Now, what people are doing, not just Flutter main, but also the Calyrex Shadow Rider, now what people are doing is going Terra normal Goldango. So now the Shadow Rider can't even hit you, and then you can hit it back, with either Make It Rain or Shadow Ball. Because if you do Shadow Ball and if it goes Terra Fairy, now you're weak to Make It Rain, and Goldango really creates that pin against it. And then overall, besides that matchup, it just does so much damage into everything else. A tier for sure. Chien-Pao here, I love this thing. I think S tier is correct here. Like Chien-Pao Urshifu, Chien-Pao Rillaboom. Chien-Pao Tornadus, Rilla, a very good hyper offensive core here. Makes your physical options do more damage. Even if you don't have Tornadus, Chien-Pao Rillaboom, very, very good. You get to blow up terrain with Ice Spinner. So Rillaboom, Indeedee, Miraidon terrains go bye-bye. You have Sucker Punch pressure against the Calyrex, forcing them to Terra Fairy and burn that. You've got Sacred Sword against Iron Defense stuff running around in the meta that want to click Body Press. So you get to ignore that. So, very good for what we want Chien-Pao to do. I think S tier is correct here. Ting Lu, again, very good niche for it, but definitely not in the niche tier for sure. Like the fact that you are Ground Dark is good for a lot of reasons. Again, Vessel of Ruin. We're just reducing special attack damage. You're a ground type, which gives you Miraidon immunity, almost Miraidon immunity, right? Draco Meteor will be a thing, but that's not doing as much damage to you. You've got dark typing, great into the Calyrex. You have Snarl. You can do Sand Tomb stuff with Dondozo, like we said. This is a very, very good support Pokemon for your restricted. I've seen this with the Calyrex Ice Rider. I've seen this with other physical attackers. Zamazenta has done well with Ting-Lu, all in all. Just basically things that go for Iron Defense stuff, partner with Ting-Lu, make it, as an unbreakable duo, because now you're getting a lot of defense boost and you're using the Ting-Lu to reduce special attack damage. And the fact that you have a good matchup into Shadow Rider and Miraidon, 2 of the top 4 restricteds, definitely merits a very high slot in the tier list here. So I think B tier is correct. Again, and also in Trick Room, you get to outspeed the Ice Rider too, so you have that going for you. Brunation chip damage, also very solid. Stomping Tantrum, after a Fissure Miss is also going to do a lot of damage. You can do a lot with Ting-Lu here, and you still have like plays like Heavy Slam if you want to snipe Fluttermanes or Clefairies for that matter. Lots of good utility for Ting-Lu depending on how you want to play it. You could even argue it's like low A tier. We may do that at the end of the tier list once we ranked everything, but I think for sure high B tier is correct for what we want the Ting-Lu to be able to do. Chi-Yu here, I think, of course, just like Fluttermane, definitely meriting an A tier slot. Super aggressive. We call it the Flutterfish combination. Aggressive Heat Waves, aggressive Snarl. With the Choice Scarf, you outspeed the Shadow Rider. You can just KO it instantly with either a Dark Pulse or a Snarl. And Tornadus Tailwind with Sunny Day, activating the Chi-Yu, doing a ton of damage. You'll see this a lot paired with Miraidon, do a lot more damage. Terra Ground Chi-Yu next to Miraidon, Discharge, just does so much. And then even this thing with the Shadow Rider also, again, you get to boost Astral Barrage damage. That's not great either if you're the opponent. So, just super, super aggressive. Just make sure you hit your Heat Waves, right? I've also seen Covert Cloak sets, right? So, this way you can avoid getting the fake out stuff and the speed or the damage reduction. So, lots of different ways you can use the Chi-Yu. Scarf set, like we said, is a little bit more popular than the Covert Cloak set at the moment, but still very good for what we want it to do. Roaring Moon. This one's taking a step back a little bit. I think right now it's in the C tier. Nobody's really using this outside of maybe some Groudon or some Koraidon teams. Very niche choice. Again, does get access to Tailwind. You get Breaking Swipe. You are a Dark type, so that's pretty good into the Shadow Rider, unless they go Terra Fairy and click Draining Kiss in your face. Then it's not good. But very niche for what we want Roaring Moon to do in that sense. But still can do good, with stuff like Boost Energy, Acrobatics sets. But all in all, it had its time. But right now in this format, not so much. Just like Excalibur. Iron Valiant, a little bit better. But again, like low B tier, or even like, I still think this is niche tier. Like outside of Miraidon teams, who's using this thing? Nobody, right? So, you get access to Wide Guard. You have a fighting move for Terapagos. Spirit Break is really good as a stab physical move against other physical attackers. But outside of Miraidon, you're not really using it. But, still good on those teams, right? Walking Wake, again, just like Roaring Moon here, again, can be used, on those Koraidon teams, along with, some Groudon teams. But outside of that, you're not really seeing it. Life Orb, it's just a nuker, right? You could get a lot more for that slot as opposed to, just committing to a Walking Wake. If I had to use a Photosynthesis Mon on a Sun team, I'm just going to go with Raging Bolt and Fluttermane, right? I don't need a Walking Wake in that sense. I'd rather have something else there. Okie dokie. I would say low B is correct. Again, another Incineroar, Intimidate kind of thing. You are a fighting type, so you're gonna have something for Terapagos. A Poison type is also pretty good, just because again, you have something for the fairies, especially if things do go Terra Fairy. You can have that against them. It's super bulky, especially. So I think low B tier is correct for Okie dokie right now. Arkeladon, mainly on those Kyogre teams. Outside of that, not used, but still very good. I think C tier is correct. Electro Shot in the Rain, just takes 1 turn. You get to use it immediately. You get a nice special attack boost. You also get body press stuff after like good chip damage. So, Arkeladon, very good Pokemon. I like it a lot. Every time I use it, I'm never disappointed. But, again, like I said, outside of those Kyogre teams, you don't really utilize it. Or, Pelipper, yes, you can technically do that, but we're in a restricted format. I feel like there's more for that slot if you want to use Pelipper something versus our Pelipper or Arkeladon, right? So I think C tier is correct. Very good. Draco Meteor, Flash Cannon. Again, the attacks start ramping up, right, after all those Electro Shots. And the body press stuff is always going to be good. But again, niche tier. Outside of Kyogre, you're not going to use it. Same thing here. The Sinistra, again, good Pokemon overall. Like, good Trick Room setter. Has a lot of healing. With Strength Sap and Hospitality is a nice move. Some people have started to explore this later on. But right now, I think C tier is correct. Trick Room setter, again, pretty good. Amoonguss immunity, also nice. Ghost typing, a little bit situational. There is dark types and Calyrex running around, but I think C tier is definitely correct right now. All right, this thing, yeah, the Iron Crown. Once upon a time, this also was pretty good, but right now, okay. Like, you can use this on Miraidon teams, but you can't use Expanding Force, which was like a really good, strong selling point. But, outside of that, yeah, I almost want to put in the D tier in this format. And again, Calyrex is tough to use. There is other stuff, other fire types running around now. I think Iron Crown, not so great at the moment, but you could find a good niche for it on some of those Miraidon teams. But I don't think those are going to be like very niche Miraidon teams, but I'll give it the benefit of that. I'm gonna say C tier. I don't think it's bad as like some of these D tier options. I think C is correct for what we wanted to do. Raging Bolt, 100% A tier. This is one of my favorite mons in this generation. Thunderclap priority move. You get Assault Vest to make it super bulky. Snarl support. You've got the big nuke in Draco Meteor. You could do Calm Mindsets that's still running around. Hard hitter for Pelipper, hard hitter for Urshifu. It just does very, very well, right? And if you put this against some other Miraidon teams, the Miraidon is just boosting Raging Bolt, right? Also pretty well used on those Koraidon teams, right? So it's also nice there. And very splashable on pretty much any kind of team, right? A lot of these things, they're very splashable on a lot of different teams. You ever notice that? That's kind of where like the A tier comes in. Maybe just this one besides the Ursaluna, but other than that, all these guys, you could definitely find a slot on most teams for each of these, right? And that's kind of what separates the A tier from like the B tier mons. So I think Raging Bolt here definitely in its right spot. Amoonguss, just like Incin, man. Incin, Amoonguss defensive backbone. You have Spore, you have Redirection, Pollen Puff for healing. You get to play the game in Trick Room against the Calyrex stuff. It just nothing else needs to be said. Just like Incin, Amoonguss, just one step behind it. I think S tier is correct. It's still very good. Again, Miraidon did hamper its use a little bit, but Amoonguss has 3 other good moves. So yeah. Lander's Staring. Again, ground typing. But another Intimidate Pokemon here. Where's my Arcanine Gyarados stuff? Yeah, right here again. Look at these 4 Intimidate mons. Hitmontop, Arcanine, Gyarados, Landers, all in the C tier, right? And then here's your A tier. I'm sorry, S tier Intimidator and Incineroar. I think again, Landers. I feel like it just needs to be explored a little bit more, honestly. Like you have Intimidate, which is good. You have a great attacking stat, the highest of these bunch, right? And then you're a ground type, so that's good against something like Miraidon, so that's nice. But there's a lot more Kyogre running around. There's a Calyrex Ice Rider running around. So it does make things a little bit difficult, I would say. But you have some advantages against something like, Zamazenta even, right? So that's not too bad there. But it can just wall you if it just gets enough iron defenses. So not super great. But, you can still find a niche for it. I think C tier is correct for this Landorus. Whereas the other one, A tier, also very strong. Just earth power, not susceptible to your own Intimidate. a little bit faster too. The fact that this is faster than Chiyu, that already just puts it in the A tier category. And you get Miraidon immunity too, right? So if you really wanted the ground flying type that was immune to Miraidon, just use this Landorus as opposed to this one, I think. Alright, all the Ogre Pawns. Alright, so Wellspring, Heart Flame, Cornerstone, and the Defiant one. I feel like the Defiant one goes down here in the niche tier. And then every one of these other ones, I think you can almost put them all in the A tier. Literally. I think Cornerstone is very good. Same with Heart Flame and even the Wellspring. Like, I'm not gonna lie. There was a time where like Wellspring was in the S tier and the Urshifu Rapid Strike took a step back. But now the story has flipped in Regulation G. Now, that being said, I still think Wellspring is still very good, especially when paired with Volcarona, right? You get to redirect the Urshifu Rapid Strike attacks, you know, pretty good into Kyogre. And, you know, in that sense, you still hit pretty hard with Ivy Cudgel if you Terra it. And then at the same time, you know, Horn Leech is still a solid recovery move, and it's still bulky, right? The Heart Flame can still do decent damage, you know, with the attack boost, of course. And then you have Wood Hammer. And then the Cornerstone, in my opinion, is the one that's going to be rising above these other guys. I think the rock typing is good. You get Sturdy. So, you know, it's finally found its leggings in Regulation G. Whereas these two were used way more in previous formats. But now in Reg G, you're starting to see this used a lot more than these other two. But I think this is correct. I think all three of them are in the A tier for what we want them to do. Gouging Fire, you know, I do like it. It has some niche, you know, on some teams like Zacian teams where you can just howl and boost it, or even like Rayquaza, you can howl and boost that. But besides that, I think it's also taken a step back here for what the format is giving it. But that being said, it still provides you the same toolkit. You also get Snarl now, which is also pretty good into the Shadow Rider. So, you know, you've got that going for it. But I think low B is correct for it right now. Same, the Iron Boulder, you know, again, another niche tier mon. Again, you know, Mighty Cleave is a good move if you know what it does, right? But other than that, like, are you really using this? Like, you know, tell me what would give you a reason to use this versus some of these other A tier mons. I'll wait for that answer here. Iron Jugulus. All right, this is where, you know, the Tangs and Mr. Valentine have made their money here. Iron Jugulus. I think, you know, I think it's like within the Moltres idea here. You know, again, just both dark flying types here. You know, you get Tailwind, you get Snarl, which is really good. And then you're super fast. You can outspeed things. But, you know, outside of those Kyogre teams, you might see them seldomly used on those Miraidon teams, right? But I think they have better partners, you know, besides the Jugulus. But besides that, it does what it's supposed to do. You need that Dark type for Calyrex. You need Snarl support, and you need Tailwind. Jugulus can do that. Low B tier, I think, is correct. This one, Iron Treads. I did see a team like this at NAIC that did very, very well in Day 2. But again, outside the Miraidon discharge shenanigans, right? You know, I don't think too many people are using this. But that is its one niche on those Miraidon teams. Outside of that, not so great. Jumpluff, again, you could argue it is in the niche tier, but like, listen, you know, Jumpluff had its time in Regulation F. I don't think you need to use this anymore. If you want to really make a Sun team, you have better choices for those Koraidon teams. You don't need Jumpluff there. Again, you could argue, again, it is a niche, but you don't need to use it. Comfey here, same thing here. I think you could, you know, almost put this in the low B tier. I still think it's pretty niche. I think it's pretty good niche. You know, Trick Room, Floral Healing. Triage is a broken ability. Draining Kiss is quite nice. But outside of that, doesn't really put out much offensive pressure. Not that it needs to. It's a support Pokemon. But, you know, good with Terapagos, right? You can heal it back to full, so it can take advantage of its ability. Same thing with, like, the Lunala teams. I've seen it. I've seen this with Lugia, right? At the regional play. So not too bad there. But, again, I still think it's niche. I still think, you know, some of these other fairy options are better, like Clefairy or even Screamtail for that matter, for what we wanted to do. But Comfey, very specific in terms of the healing and where it's more appreciated versus these other options. I think C tier is correct here. Ditto. Man, Ditto, man. Listen, I almost want to put this in the A tier, but I think high B is correct here. You know, you can actually, You know what? I'm gonna put Ditto right here. You know, I think it does merit a low A tier slot here. I think, you know, it's, if you have a good solid 5 core, right? If you're very confident in 5 of your Pokemon and you're trying to find a 6, I think Ditto can just round out that slot very well. You get a chance at a second restricted, okay? And if with the Choice Scarf and your restricted is faster than your opponent's restricted, the game is over. You're gonna win that 9 times out of 10, right? As long as you play accurately. So I think Ditto, when positioned properly, can transform into a game-changing Pokemon and then just win you the game. I do like it. I've seen it a lot on those Calyrex teams, those Miraidon teams, the Ice Rider team too. I think it fits perfectly on pretty much most teams that need that 6th slot that are confident in the other 5. I think A tier is correct right now for the Ditto. Mienshao here, you know, again, high B I think is correct here. Again, very good for what we needed to do. Like one-shot Incineroar. We have a fast fake-out user. We have wide guard support. You can also run like Feint if you need to. Break Sashes or break Protects, and then, you know, just sweep with your Calyrex. It's used mostly with the Shadow Rider teams. Again, like we said, most Shadow Rider teams want a good, strong fighting type. Mienshao fits in perfectly there. You can also do coaching stuff, like coaching Ho-Oh that we featured in our other team building video a little bit. You can do coaching Calyrex Ice Rider. It's great there, and then you get access to Wide Guard to support it against other spread moves. So I think Mienshao is really, really good in a restricted format, because outside of that, nobody's using this thing, right? So I think high B tier is correct. Bronzong, same thing here. I think, you know, maybe not high B, but I think low B is good as well. Ice Rider can't touch this thing, okay? You have Iron Defense Body Press, okay? You can't click a ground move against this thing because of Levitate. And then the Ice move is not going to do anything. So you're going to win that matchup because you have, you know, Gyro Ball stuff. And like I said, if you can just support this with Body Press, Iron Defense Body Press stuff, and then maybe have a Tinglu here, Bronzong becomes very hard to break. Good with Groudon, good with other, you know, slower teams like a Calyrex team. But, you know, outside of that, I think you'll have better options. But I still think Bronzong is good for what we needed to do. Just a bulky Trick Room setter with Body Press and the occasional Gyro Ball is also very nice. Pelipper here, again, you know, at this point, you know, 2 months in, very well established support Pokemon, bringing the rain, bringing the pain. You know, Weather Ball in the rain does so much. You one-shot the instants. Wide Guard is very good. Hurricane, modest Hurricane damage is also quite strong. You can also build it bulky with like a Rocky Helmet Citrus Berry set. You know, you could do Covert Cloak stuff. But again, it's just a very, very good splashable Pelipper option. You'll see like Pelipper Urshifu on a lot of different teams, and then other core 4 options from there with the restricted, of course. But, you know, Pelipper really shines in this format. I think A tier is correct. Wo-Chien here. Ooh. Okay, Wo-Chien. So, you know, for a while nobody was using it, but then people started to realize its potential, especially with the strong special attacking restricted. We've seen the most recent one with Kyogre, Grimmsnarl Screens from Justin Shiliong and others. So, you know, you can use it there. The fact that you can Pollen Puff the Kyogre and have it do a ton of damage is great. You know, you're a dark type, so that's great into the Calyrex Shadow Rider. You know, the Runation chip damage is good. Leech Seed endgames. You know, the Wo-Chien becomes relatively hard to break. And, you know, for that reason, I think it merits a, do I want to put it low B or do I want to put it in C tier? It's tricky. I'll leave it in low B tier for now. I think it definitely has earned the slot. But, you know, if you want to put it in C, I think, you know, C is also correct for it. But, you know, it's just not as good as the others. But for the job that we want it to do, it does it very, very well. Latios here, another one. You know, again, niche tier, just like its partner Latias. You know, Tailwind, not as bulky as Latias, but again, can give you like good aggression with Luster Purge stuff. Levitate is also nice. The Dragon typing is good against the Fire, Water, Grass cores. So not too bad. But, you know, outside of maybe some of those Zamazenta teams, I have seen this with Zacian too. So there is some usage there, but outside of that, not too much there. All right, so the Fire Ghost types here, right? And where is Skeledirge here? Yeah, I'm gonna rank all these guys. All right, so right here, all of them are in the C tier. right? Scaarlet, Chandelure, and Skeledirge, right? And for good reason. You know, fire ghost typing along with flash fire for Scaarlet and Chandelure. Great against, you know, Koraidon teams because you just wall them, right? You can't click the fighting move because, you know, you're a ghost type, and you can't click your fire move because you have flash fire. So you just completely wall 2 restricteds, which is very, very good. And then at the same time, you know, you've got Bitter Blade for recovery. You're great against the grass types like Rillaboom and Amoonguss. You have Shadow Sneak potential against sniping Calyrexes if they're chipped down enough. Chandelure, same thing. You know, you have access to Trick Room too, so that's going to be good against you. And you're a much stronger special attacker, you know, than this thing. This thing is a physical attacker. You have to run Clear Amulet on it. Whereas this, you can be a little bit more aggressive. You can put Life Orb on this. 140 special attack is very strong. You know, strong hitting Shadow Balls is quite nice. And then Skeledirge, similar niche again. That fire ghost typing, Unaware is quite good. And you know, Torch Song to ramp up damage is quite good. Slack Off for healing. But you know, again, very, very niche. If you don't need a Zamazenta or Koraidon matchup, then you're better off finding other slots. But if you do need it, then these two can probably fill in that last slot that you need them to do. All right. All right, next up here we have the Hisuian Lilligant here. So basically, you know, outside of the Torkoal stuff, you know, the After You Eruption shenanigans and then maybe the occasional Sleep Powder, you're not really going to see this. I mean, yeah, you do have that fighting coverage for close combat for the Terrapagos, of course. But other than that, yeah, it can work on those Trick Room teams with Torkoal. But outside of that, I'd rather just use Rillaboom, right? Or another Ogerpon. Umbreon, you know what? I'm going to give it a low B here. Like, technically, it is a niche option here, but it has had some decent performances at the regional level. You know, I've seen that Tornadization team, you know, use Umbreon. You got Yawn support, you have Snarl, you have Foul Play. It's very bulky, Inner Focus, you can't fake it out or whatnot. Again, that dark typing does make it great. Toxic is also another thing. Moonlight in the Sun is also quite nice. So you can even play it on some of those Sun teams with either Groudon or Koraidon. I think it works well there. But overall, I think, you know, you might even just put this in the niche here. But I'm going to give it low B tier for now. I think it's pretty decent. I think more people should use it. It has quite the toolkit there. Swampert, another Pokemon that hasn't had much usage, but should maybe be explored more. Ground typing. So again, good, just like Gashodon, you know, water ground type. Pretty solid into Miraidon stuff. You can wall out the electric attacks. You have Wide Guard, right? So that's also pretty cool. You're a pretty decent physical attacker, so you can hit somewhat hard. But then at the same time, you know, I'd rather just use maybe something like a Pelipper if I really wanted a water type with Wide Guard. There's a few others like that, but I think Pelipper is the best quote-unquote water type Wide Guard user. But Swampert can still do something, and you can definitely find a niche for it. Especially the fact that you do have ground typing, which Pelipper does not, allows you to, you know, have a decent matchup into Miraidon and Raging Bolt stuff, right? And even Iron Hands too now. So try and explore Swampert. Let's see what you guys can come up with there. But Araquanid, another good solid Pokemon. Here's another water type that has Wide Guard usage. I do like it. I think low B is also correct for it. You know, again, very good in Trick Room stuff. Can outspeed the Calyrex in Trick Room. You know, it just hits hard with Mystic Water. Liquidation's quite good. Leech Life, Bug typing, resist fire, fighting attacks as well. You know, it's pretty good. And then special defense wise, it's pretty solid. And like I said, it does get Wide Guard. So nice option here in regulationG for sure. Definitely worth exploring if you haven't done so already. Serena, another one, you know, pretty decent niche with those Kyogre teams because again, Kyogre being weak to Rillaboom and also being weak to Raging Bolt. Serena has come in onto those Kyogre teams and has done well. And you got to see that a little bit more in Sword and Shield too, right? So again, with Wide Lens Triple Axle, you can pretty much destroy the Rillabooms and the Raging Bolts, you know, with that Ice type coverage. And then at the same time, you're in the rain. You're not taking as much fire type damage. And then you have your own fire type stat move here, right? And then you can always accompany it with stuff like Helping Hand and Taunt. So nice idea there with Serena. And again, just denying priority moves altogether. Probably not as good or as splashable as your Indeedee or Farigiraf here, but you know, for an aggressive grass type that can do that, I think Serena does that job very, very well, and very nice on those Kyogre teams for sure. Regieleki, you know, again, I'm always going to put this in the C tier just because there's so much better electric types. Like, if you want E-Webs, you know, you can just do Raging Bolt. If you want the, you know, good usage, you know, in terms of like, not good usage, strong electric attacks like Thunderbolt or whatnot, or Volt Switch, you know, but I feel like Raging Bolt and Iron Hands do this job much better in this generation than Regieleki, especially after the nerfs, right? Not to say that it's not playable, because again, you still outspeed the Calyrex, so you still have that going for you, but this is not Dynamax anymore, so I still think it's niche, but it can still work if you're really hard-pressed to make Regieleki work, okay? Brute Bonnet, you know, again, the niche that it has, it's, you know, of course, it's another photosynthesis mod, so it's gonna do okay on those Koraidon teams, but outside of that, not so great. I'd rather just have Amoonguss. You do have that dark typing for the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and then, of course, you can outspeed a lot of different threats, you know, with photosynthesis, or you can just get a straight-up attack boost and make it hit harder. You do still have Rage Powder and Spore, just like Amoonguss, but defensively, the typing is not as good. But in terms of, you know, the dark coverage, that will give you that niche in that sense. So I do think it does merit some play on those Koraidon teams. Sableye, you know, another prankster Pokemon. It does get a couple tools like Will-O-Wisp, just like, you know, actually it's the only one that gets Will-O-Wisp. It still has Sunny Day, and actually I'm just gonna put it here in the niche. It does get access to Sunny Day, Will-O-Wisp, you know, Quash for, you know, good, decent speed control. You can still do screen stuff, but you know, you also get Foul Play. Sableye gets a lot of good support moves, but I just feel like the other prankster mons are just much better than the Sableye itself. But again, it can still work. You also get Gravity, right? So you can make your moves hit, especially if you're paired with something like Groudon. So that's also nice if you want to do something like that. Again, but that's very niche, hence the C tier. Garganacl, another one that falls within this. I think its best role is on those Koraidon teams. Again, just being you know, on a Sun team, just taking reduced damage from water is good. And then you get Wide Guard, you have Sulk Cure, you have Amoonguss immunity. You can definitely find some niche on a team. Its best niche, like I said, is on those Koraidon teams, because outside of that, I don't think it's good. Milotic, another one, you know, competitive aspect. You can do hypnosis plays. We saw this on stream at the regional level. You know, Scald is quite nice, but other than that, Coils Shenanigans is also okay. Actually, I don't even think does Milotic still get Scald? I can't even remember anymore. It's been so long since I've used this thing, but it's not too bad. But if I wanted an anti, you know, intimidate Pokemon, I would just use these other options, like maybe even Okidogi or King Gambit for that matter. But you know, hypnosis plays, coil plays, you can wall out certain things. So, you know, definitely can have some use on certain teams, but not too many. Oh god, please don't use Alolan Muck. Please don't use this thing. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had to record and face this thing, and the battle itself just ends up being like 20 minutes long because I'm just trying to hit one move to knock it out. But hey, if you want to play the minimize route with Smeargle, go for it. You know, I'm not going to speak any more on it. It's very niche. Galarian Zapdos, I feel like, is a little bit underrated here. Okay, I'm going to put it maybe at the low end of the high B tier. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Again, besides the anti-intimidate stuff, you know, you're a fighting type, and that's good into Terrapagos. You have access to dark moves, which can give you some leverage into the Calyrex matchup. You can run a Scarf set on this thing, which is also quite good. You're a flying type as well, so you know you can hit a lot of these grass types and Urshifu for a decent, good chunk of damage. Probably just straight up KO them. Just watch out for stuff like Raging Bolt and Miraidon there. So I do think it's still decent. I think the B tier is correct. I think it's better than some of these guys down here, but yeah, I'm gonna put it in the high B tier for now. All right, Sandy Shocks. You know, we do have a video on this coming out. You know, again, Sandy Shocks, quite good photosynthesis on a Koraidon team. Believe it or not, ground typing again gives you that Miraidon matchup. And then, you know, the speed tier allows you to outspeed the base 100. So, you know, you can hit a Chiyu first, which is quite good. The same thing that Landers can do. But, again, I'd rather just use Landers if I wanted an Earth Power user. But, hey, it still works with photosynthesis, right? So you can outspeed certain threats in the sun. Iron Moth, Again, also not too bad with Miraidon stuff, but there are better options. I'd even just use Iron Bundle and, you know, the Iron Valiant over the Moth. But Moth does a lot of damage, by the way, so, you know, don't sleep on it. You know, Toxapex, again, that's that other water type, like I said, that can get access to Wide Guard. You have Toxic Infestation stuff. So if you want to go the slow route, you can do that. But, you know, you'd be hard-pressed to tell me this is my water type on my team versus something like Urshifu or an Ogerpon or a Pelipper. I feel like those are just way better than something like a Toxapex. But if you want that kind of play style, then the Tox can do that for you, I guess. All right, Overcoat. We saw this recently on stream, and you know, one of the top 8 teams at NAIC. Again, the Poison Dark typing, you know, just like Skuntank, which we're going to talk about in a second. It's just, you know, yeah, I still want to put it like in the C tier. Like on the Kyogre teams, again, Swift Swim is quite good. You have access to Acid Spray, which is gonna make that Kyogre and also Landorus do a ton of damage, right? And then you have that Dark type and attack for the Calyrex matchup, so you can do a lot. And again, you can outspeed it too, right? Because of Swift Swim. So you do have a niche going for you. And if they want to go Terra Fairy, that's okay because you have poison coverage, you know, and typing. So that's going to be okay for Overquill. And the same thing I can say for Skuntank. Again, another one in the C tier. We featured this in a video recently, right? So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do. Again, another Poison Dark typing. The same kind of role that Overquill plays. You know, you have the Sucker Punch, the Dark plays. You have the Poison typing if they want to go Terra Fairy stuff. So Skuntank can do something, but again, both of them I feel like again belong in the niche tier. They're very specific jobs for what they want to do. Same thing here with the Frostmoth. I'm not going to do this one, the Lilligant, because I did it already. I just copied it twice without me realizing it. But yeah, last one here, the Frostmoth. Okay, another C tier option. Again, you know, Wide Guard user, pretty good. Bug typing, very bulky, super effective attacks against some psychic types, which is quite nice. The Scales is quite a good ability. But all in all, look, if you want to set this up with Quiver Dance, yes, it can do that. Ice Beam is decent chip, but all in all, very niche. Again, if I wanted a Wide Guard user, I'd use some other Pokemon. But, you know, I feel like if you do get Wide Guard, if your name's not Pelipper, you're just pretty much niche. Unless you have, like, Smeargle here, and some other, like, is there another Wide Guard user? I didn't even put in, oh, and the Raccoon, I guess that's okay. But, you know, again, Frostmoth, you know, again, does what it needs to do. Yeah, I'm going to block, spread moves. I'm going to deal occasional chip damage. I have some bulk on me. I'm going to take advantage of it. But outside of that, yeah, you know, it's not super great. But still playable for the job that we wanted to do if I did really want to use Frostmoth. All right, so that's our list. So now let's take a moment and let's see if we need to move stuff up and down depending on, you know, where we placed it. All right, so let's just recap our list here. So I think the S tier is correct here. I think there's no doubt. D tier, yeah, same thing. I don't see anybody playing these mons, so yeah. And again, just keep in mind that I may not have put everything. I just used like a given tier list and just added a couple more mons to it that I felt like were at least decently relevant. So I may have missed a few options that are just simply not here. But if they're not here, I either, like I said, missed it or I didn't think it was relevant enough. So, you know, just take this with a grain of salt. But at least it gives you an overall picture of where we are right now. I feel like, again, you know, a lot of these cores or like from the S and A tier, they're very splashable, and you'll see on a lot of teams, just all in general. You know, you're going to see a lot of Fluttermane, you're going to see a lot of Chiyu, you're going to see a lot of, you know, Farigiraf and stuff like that. Same thing with these staples up here in the S tier. And then from there, you know, the B tier stuff is just, you know, subjective depending on the team that you're using and how you want to play it, depending on playstyle. The one thing I do want to say here, I do think Clefairy does merit an A slot here. You know, if anything, a low A. You know, top 20 usage at NAIC. You know, I think, yeah, that's good enough. I think it's really, really good. But again, the argument can be made is, again, still the high B tier is correct. And then over here, I think I also want to drop Hatterene back down here to the low B tier. I think it's good on those Trick Room teams, but I don't think it's like high B tier. I still think it's solid, it's decent, but not to this point over here. I think everything here is correct in terms of high B tier. You can even make an argument for Dragonite here, but even then, it's a little bit shaky. But everything else here, I think is okay. Like Wo-Chien, Umbreon, you know, I guess you could argue C tier for sure. Even Dondozo, Tatsugiri. Like, you can make some arguments for like these low B tier options. Could be in the C tier, but I felt like they had enough results to merit at least half a tier above the C tier slot, in my opinion, right? And then after that, like, who's else is here? I think this is correct in terms of, right, A tier. C tier, yeah, like you see Tyranitar, the Fire Ghost stuff here, Sinistra, Frostmoth, Garganical. I think C tier is correct here. And then, of course, we didn't rank the restricted legendaries because that's not the objective of the video. All right, so let me know what you think of our list here, and let me know if you think we missed one that you think should be on this list, or let me know if you think I judge one or some of these mons a little bit incorrectly. They're all very much up for debate. That's why we do tier lists. But again, this at least gives you a sense of where we are in terms of the non-restricted Pokemon in the given meta at this given moment. All right, so we'll be back with another video in the next one. Peace out and have a good one.